Norma Kamali presents Hey Baby on SiriusXM Stars 107.
I remember hearing about Gloria Steinem, this feminist activist author who was profoundly part of a change group of women who took everything we knew about being women and turned it upside down and shocked everyone, including a lot of men, when she and her cohorts said things have got to be different. And I guess remember her the best in the early 70s when I was married and I believed men could take care of business and do all of those things, and women did the other stuff. So while I was in business with my ex-husband, I assumed that he did all the business things and he could handle it very well, and I would do the designing. Well, oops. Didn't necessarily happen that way. So I thought I was going to separate, get a divorce, and go on my own. And Gloria Steinem and her crew were the little voices in the back of my head that said, you can do that. And I hardly spoke. I was so shy. I would sit in my sample room and sew and make my clothes. Nobody really knew I existed. The name of the company was Kamali, and my husband was out front, and he was partying and doing all this stuff, and nobody really knew I existed. But I thought, you know what? You can do it. And I did. It was shocking. So I was on my own, and when I did it, I was flooded with letters from women saying, I want to do that too. You're my inspiration. You're going to do it. Gloria, you are one of the key women who inspired me to realize that women can do anything, and why not?
I was a writer living in New York, being discriminated against but not objecting to it, really. I couldn't get political assignments, even though the guys who got them were less experienced than I was, or I couldn't get an apartment because they thought you weren't financially responsible, or if you were, you must be a hooker. You know, I mean, all these things were happening to me, but I was trying to avoid them individually. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until other things happened to me. I mean, I lived in India for a while. I came home and saw the parallel of the civil rights movement. And women inside the civil rights movement and inside the anti-Vietnam movement who, I mean, we loved those movements, but women in those movements were in the same position in many cases as in the rest of society. Mm-hmm. So it dawned on everybody gradually by contagion, or many people, that we had to have a women's movement. Mm-hmm. I mean, that, you know, nobody does it for you. You have to speak up for yourself.
What year was that? When was the beginning of it?
It was about 68, 69.
Really? It was that early? Mm-hmm. Wow. And so what was the first big action that was taken? What was the first thing that got everybody's attention?
Well, there's a first thing for everybody in different towns. I don't want to say, I can just say that for me, the first was going as a reporter to cover a hearing on abortion, because the New York State Legislature, this was before the Supreme Court ruling, was trying to decide whether to liberalize the law in New York State, and they had invited to testify 14 men and 1 nun.
No.
So, right, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
Okay. So a bunch of wonderful women had decided to have their own hearing in a church basement downtown, and I went to cover it. And I was astounded. It was the first time in my life that I had ever heard women standing up in public saying what happened to them, and only to women, and taking it seriously. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was the first time. I mean, I was absolutely astounded. And then I thought, wait a minute, this has happened to me. I needed an abortion in my lifetime. 1 in 3 American women needs an abortion. How come it's criminalized, and how come it's stigmatized? And, you know, that was the consciousness beginning, which then once you pull at a thread, it all starts to unravel. I would say the big mass understanding was the march for the anniversary of the vote for women on Fifth Avenue, because we had all marched for everything but ourselves.
And there
were thousands and thousands of of people on
Wow.
Fifth Avenue.
And when was that? What year
That
was
was 71, I think. Right.
So I think because I'm a fashion designer, I'm going to go here for a second. Forgive me.
Sure.
But I think to put this in perspective for a lot of young people, let's talk about what women were wearing in the 60s to the 70s, because it gives you a sense of where we were about our freedom and where we were about our bodies and where we were about, the burning bra thing was a significant statement. I know that when I was in FIT, we were wearing girdles and stockings. And that was 1964, 65. It wasn't until the end of the 60s where we were freer and less confined by the type of corseted bras we were wearing and the type of girdles. I mean, it was impossible for a guy to get in your pants unless you wanted him to. I mean, to take off a girdle was just not something that could happen easily. So by us taking them off and the time for us to be freer with undergarments, I think had a significant correlation to our attitudes too, and to the need to free up, to finally the early 70s, where my staff cannot believe that I actually wore no underwear through the early part of the 70s, and it didn't occur to me that it was a terrible thing. So I think that there is something to that, and something also to the freeing up of where we were thinking as women. So that, just from a fashion perspective and a clothing and what women wore, I think there's a lot of big change that happened then.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. We were wearing garter belts and waist cinchers and girdles and white gloves.
Right.
And little hats.
Gloves and hats and bags that match.
Yeah. I mean, just one thing I want to say is, though, the rate of rape was just as bad when there were girdles as when there weren't. It isn't
Really?
as if, I mean, a knife can do anything.
Is that right?
So I don't want to.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, we can't, because it leads to the idea of blaming women for rape according to what they have on.
Yes.
Well, if she'd only worn a
very
girdle,
interesting.
She would have been fine.
That's
Not
very
true.
interesting.
Yeah, right. But certainly the problem, the fundamental problem is, I think, that we were dressing according to ideas of being a good girl, of being a lady,
right.
Of externally imposed ideas. And I hope that more and more we're dressing the way we feel, what we feel like. Yeah. And we should be able to wear anything we want and be safe. We should be able to walk down the street nude and be safe.
Right. So you're in this world now. I mean, you're part of this world. You witnessed. You've been writing about it, and so I know that for me in 1974, I separated from my husband, and I was building a reputation, and I changed my label from Norma from Kamali, which was his name actually, to OMO on my own. Norma Kamali, my lawyer said, you can use the name, but you have to put this new on my own label on it. I was flooded with mail from women across the country who were saying, you're such an inspiration. I'm going to go on my own. I need to do this too. I can't do this anymore. And my mantra was, I always thought men knew more about business and could handle all of these things, and that was the role. And I couldn't do it on my own, but I was going to try it on my own. And I was shocked at the response because it was so radical. I look at it now and it doesn't seem radical at all. But there were radical things happening. It was radical for a group of women to get together and have a conversation about abortion. I think the understanding of that right now would be so hard to believe. But what else was? It's
not so hard to believe when we have a one of our two major parties utterly devoted to a human life amendment, which declares the fertilized egg to be a person and would nationalize women's bodies through. I mean, what's different now is we have huge majority support for reproductive freedom. So the old hierarchical thinkers are in full backlash, but it's in the papers absolutely every day. And, no more could the first Bush or Rockefeller or even Reagan or any of those guys get nominated because this party has been taken over by ultra right-wing folks, many of whom used to be Democrats, were upset that the Democratic Party became too inclusive for them. So, it's not as if this is old stuff. It's in the papers absolutely every day. The difference is now we have majority support, so now the opposition is even madder than before.
Well, I think that there were other things that were totally radical. I mean, like leaving a man, getting a divorce was still a big deal.
No, it's great. You put out the magic signal there by saying "on my own." And no wonder you got all this response, because
it was
the idea that we were nothing unless we had a man standing next to us was certainly the going idea of the day.
And there were other examples of that. I think the idea of a woman having a career and deciding to have a career, that also started then. By the 80s, that concept of, the power woman, you can even tell by the way, again, clothes defining how she was, power suit, shoulder pads. Here we are. We're going to compete in that world.
And we were supposed to dress like them in order to do that, which is one of the most popular covers that Ms. Magazine ever did, was one of those little suits with a blouse and a tie, held over a garbage can. And the line was, "Good news, you don't have to dress like a man for success." Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And the interesting thing was that the idea of a woman in the workplace and, what her role would be. Is she still going to be the secretary? Does that mean what her role is, the secretary? And now it's like, wait a minute, we can do other things. We can run companies. We can make this happen. And again, here we are today, and equal pay is still not.
No, actually,
it's still an issue.
And I think we have to phrase it in a more realistic way, because actually equal pay for women would put $200 billion more into the economy every year. It would be the best kind of economic stimulus, because these are exactly the people who are going to spend it and create jobs.
Yeah.
It would be something like, for the average white woman, $150 more a week. For the average woman of color, it's more like $300 or more than $300 a week. I mean, it's huge. And equal pay alone would be the single greatest boost to this economy that you could possibly have. Now, we've got other problems, which is, one is that the work in the home, which is still mostly done by women, though more men are doing it too. But whether done by men or women, it should have an attributed economic value, because
or even pay someone to do it. If you have a job,
but you may not be able to. Yeah. But the people who are doing it, it's a third of the productive work in the country. If you could attribute an economic value to a replacement level and make that tax deductible. You would have given. Right now, the environment has no economic value. The work in the home has no. It makes no sense.
Yeah, right. And I'm actually stunned that I'm going to be just open here and not have a party and speak as if I don't have a party. But I think if I were running for president, I would want that female vote, and I wouldn't just have abortion because to me, enough already. Abortion, this is not the government's right, but the government.
I know, but it is one party is taking it as their right.
But the government, someone in the government should say this now, women must be paid the same amount.
Well, Obama has said that, and
it's not
the Lilly Ledbetter Act and so on.
It's not.
No. Yeah, no, it's not because people are making a lot of money off our cheap labor.
So we have to.
It's only going to happen if we do it. And one of the things we need to do, incidentally, is demand equal pay.
Yes.
Because in a lot of cases, women are overly grateful to get the job and don't demand it, or don't research and find out how much the guy next to them is getting. I mean, when people say, to me, what can they do? I say, tell each other how much you make in your office, because a lot of the time that's supposed to be secret, and if we actually tell it, we can see what the injustices are.
But I do think that there should be, a place where that the government is controlling that, because that is a key. That is key for the economy.
It is against the law, but it's not.
But then how do we?
It's the fact is that the process one has to go through to prove unequal pay.
It should be easier. It has to be easier.
But first, we have to take the responsibility for demanding it ourselves, because that's not always happening.
But I think somebody has to speak out for it and say, this is something we believe in, and this is something we want to make sure gets implemented, and we want you to have a voice to make sure that we want the word to be out that this.
But you have to. I mean, the first for Time magazine, I wrote they did a cover story early about the women's movement, and I wrote an essay for them, and they paid me less than they paid guys, my agent said. So I complained bitterly to Henry Grunwald, who was then the editor, and he sent me a Gucci purse. I tried to take the Gucci purse back and get money instead, but they wouldn't.
This is the same. This is the same story. I'm going to share a story. I had I think I even told you this. I had a license agreement with this company, and I was supposed to design. They're supposed to produce. They're not holding up their end of the bargain when it comes to the kind of production and where it should take place. And so I confront the owner and I said, look, we have an agreement. We both need to hold up our end. I have a problem with the way you're holding up your end. Let's talk about how we can resolve this. He's arguing with me, telling me he's doing it. And then he had no argument left. And he said, put on your coat, let's go shopping. And I thought, go shopping. I lost it. And I said to him, I have my own money to go shopping. Why would I want you to take me shopping? Well, it's the way to appease women.
Yeah, no.
You take them shopping, or you buy them a Gucci bag.
There was something exactly like that, because Romney was in a crowd of people, and he reached out to a woman to shake her hand, and she didn't want to shake his hand. And he said to her, oh, it's because you don't have makeup on.
No.
Yes. Right. So, I mean, this is still going on. And it's it's a cultural attitude that says that women are only good for reproduction. And I just want to say a word about aging, because that's where it comes from. That women are only valuable when we're young and lose value as we age, which incidentally is why women get more radical with age. And men tend to get more conservative with age.
That's very interesting.
Because they gain power with age, we lose power with age. They replace their fathers, we replace our mothers, and so on and so on. But I want to say a word about aging, because it is great. And what's so interesting about it is watching your body do something you don't know how to do. First of all, you lose what is necessary to create another person, which you have chosen to use or not use, up to you. But you retain everything that's necessary to support you, which is great. And it is.
And you get smarter.
And you get smarter with experience. Yeah. And I think that watching your body age is a bit like being pregnant, because you really are watching your body do something that you yourself don't know how to do. And it is great. And the idea that the plastic surgery industry, I'm sure surgery is a blessing in many cases. I'm not saying it's not. And the problem is the societal standard that makes people feel like they have to go through an extremely dangerous surgical process and put foreign substances into their body in order to sustain. Yeah. I mean, let's change the shoe, not the foot.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of appreciating how you look and who you are is so much in the mind and so much in how you think about yourself. And I think communicating about this subject and talking about it and hearing women like you with your brilliant, this to me was just so enlightening and so helpful. I think you give women the opportunity.
Well, we just need to talk to each other. I mean, here is the secret. All right. It's you and I talking, and there are two women in the room with us here. And what needs to happen is that people who are listening, women who are listening, need to talk to each other.
Yeah.
There is no substitute. Our minds work on narrative. We do not retain statistics and generalities. We need to tell our own stories. We've been sitting around a campfire for 100,000 years telling our stories. And women are made to accept someone else's story of them.
Yes.
Tell your own story and make sure you meet with other women, maybe some men too, who are supportive and to whom you can tell the truth.
Yes.
And admit what you don't know and your worries and so on, and get some support. Make this kind of alternate family or revolutionary cell, you can call it either thing, so you have it
I agree.
at least once a month or hopefully once a week, because we are communal creatures.
Yes.
If we are by ourselves, we come to feel crazy, alone, and wrong.
Yeah.
We have to be together.
See that. So now you know why I felt Gloria Steinem was so key to this series of specials on women talking about empowerment. She historically puts it all together for us, and I'm so grateful that she was a part of it.